Alright, I've been working on my Red Hood cosplay recently, and I needed some pistols for it. So I was just going to buy some and paint them, but I didn't, just don't have the money for it. So what I did have was EVA foam and a bunch of little odds and ends that I made this out of. So go ahead and check this out, guys, and hopefully you like and enjoy the videos, and this inspires you and gives you some ideas for your own projects and cosplays. Alright, so first thing I did was went ahead and drew out an actual picture of what I want this to ultimately somewhat look like, and I'm going to start cutting out pattern pieces from this. And as I cut them out, I'm going to take photos of them against this here, so that if I mess something up, I can always go back and reprint it later, or if I just want to do more later, I have it. And I'm going to put them all up on the Facebook page so you guys can see them too. Alright, so first I used some duct tape on the back side of the pattern here. Then I went ahead and cut out the main body of the pattern, the trigger pattern, and the hammer pattern. I'm going to put all this stuff up on Facebook, so if you guys want to just download it and print it out, you can. Alright, next I took a sheet of 5mm EVA craft foam, and I took my pattern and I traced it out, total 4 times, twice like this, and flipped it over, and I traced it twice like that. And I numbered them 1, 1, 2, 2, so I don't get confused, because 1 is going to go to 2, and I mean, it's kind of obvious. But anyways, next I'm going to go ahead and cut this into 4 pieces, just like this, and I cut it like this so that I can just trim each one individually. And to trim these, I'm going to be using an X-Acto knife on like this inside part here, and some of the maybe the harder corners. But the rest of it, I'm just going to be trimming with some regular old scissors. Alright, now that I've got them cut out, I have 2 1s, 2 2s, and I'm going to go ahead and glue these together like so, using some DAP contact cement. Alright, now that I have my 2 halves glued together on for both guns, I'm going to take the next pattern piece, which is just basically the basic pattern minus the trigger guard. There's going to be layers that are going to go on the outside of each of these. And the way I'm going to cut this is, I'm going to use an X-Acto knife for pretty much the whole and entire process. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to cut straight on the top piece here. But all the rest of the cuts, whenever I hold the X-Acto knife, I'm not going to hold it straight up and down. I'm going to hold it at an angle pointing inward. Give it a nice 45-degree bias cut. Give it a nice beveled edge everywhere except for this top piece. Okay, I have glued the red pieces 1 to 1, 2 to 2 on all these, and you can see here the beveled edge kind of goes in, and the reason for that is it's going to save me some time in sanding. I already have this 45-degree angle cut, so whenever I sand this edge down here, it's just going to save me a bunch of time, hopefully, ultimately. And since I'm going to be sanding, I didn't really worry if my cuts were the greatest. You can see it's kind of jagged right there. All this stuff's going to get sanded, and the longer I spend cutting, the less time I spend putting all this together and getting the video done. Okay, so I've already taken the Dremel and started to round off and smooth out and even out one, and I'm going to go ahead and do that on the second one as well. Okay, so I've got both of these pretty even for just eyeballing it. Just put them side by side here so you can see it. You know, they're pretty close to one another. And the next thing I'm going to do with the Dremel is just going to smooth off some of these edges. Places like here, you can see that it is not even. I'm going to even those out. Just little things like that. And all this stuff can be done by hand. It just takes a lot longer. And usually I do it by hand because if I slip up with this Dremel, it's going to take a chunk out of something that I probably can't fix or cover up. Probably. Yeah, and like here, you can see it's not even. But even after I do all the dremeling, I'm still going to have to hand sand it because you can see like certain areas aren't 100% smooth or even. They're kind of warbly, and I'm going to have to even that out with some hand sanding. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of this up. Contour the edges, trigger guard, backside, put a little bit of curvature here, even out anywhere like on these tips or like here on the ends where you can see it's just not even. Alright, and just for comparison, this is the one that I just finished. And you can see I rounded off all the edges here and evened everything out so that this is now pretty much even. Anything else, like I say, I'll do, just through like hand sanding or whatever. And of course, here's the one that I didn't do. You can see it's still uneven and it's got sharp edges on it. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and finish all the rough sanding with the Dremel on this one. Alright, now that I have both of these sanded down and evened out as much as possible, I'm going to take a 300 grit sanding block, and I'm also going to use some 300 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to go ahead and sand these up. Alright, now that all my hand sanding is done, I did go through and just take a heat gun and run over it real quick just to help seal up some of this and smooth out some of the areas that I sanded. And yeah, so far I'm pretty happy with the way these are turning out. They look pretty sweet so far. And I haven't even, of course, cut out the parts for the grips or the slide or anything on this. There's no trigger on it yet, there's no hammer, and I'm already pretty stoked on these. They feel good, they look pretty good so far. Can't wait to finish them. Alright, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the pattern piece for this top here. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that out of some 2mm EVA foam. Alright, here is the pattern for the slide. It's going to fold over top of the foam prop gun. And how I got the pattern was I cut out how I wanted one side to look. I measured how wide this was, and then just traced one, measured the distance, and then traced the other one, and what I got was the full piece that, once it's attached, is going to fold over the top here to look like a slide on an actual pistol. Okay, I have one that I already glued on here, and I use contact cement. I have it setting off a little bit in the back and in a little bit in the front, that way you can see that curve and that edge that I put on there. And the other one I haven't glued on yet. I'm still waiting for the contact cement to set up. I've just got everything sitting there chilling for the meantime. And next I'm going to go through and start putting on some of the other pieces, such as there is the trigger and the hammer and the slide release and a few other things, the hand grips. I'm going to start cutting out some of the patterns for all that. Alright, the next three main spots I'm going to work on is the hand grip, the trigger, and the hammer. I've cut out my patterns. Next I'm going to trace these out. First I'm going to do the hand grip, and that is going to go onto 3mm EVA foam, and I'm going to go ahead and cut out 4 of these. And for the grips here, I took 3mm EVA foam, and I took an X-Acto knife and I just scored it. I didn't cut all the way through the foam, I just used a ruler and went one way, then went back the other way. Then I took my pattern for the grip here, and I did it twice this way and twice this way, 2 for each prop pistol. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut these out. Alright, so I went ahead and glued my grips on with some super glue and hit them with the heat gun so all the scoring I did would open up. And next, I took some 2mm foam, and instead of doing a crisscross design, I just went up and down, and I've been trimming this up and putting a little heat to it, and that's going to go on here to be the textured area where you would grab to pull back the slide. Alright, so the next thing that I cut out here was the trigger, and I actually cut these out a little bit shorter, and the reason for that is I'm going to take some strips of the 5mm EVA foam, which is the same that I cut my triggers out of, 5mm, and I'm going to glue it along the front and trim it off so that it looks just like this here. See, I have the front of it, and it has some 3D to it and some shape, and will, I think, at least look much more legit as a trigger. You could also, if you want, put some holes in here. I didn't do that just because I like the traditional look of the Colt 1911 45 ACP, and there's a lot of different companies that manufacture it, but there's just something about that classic look. It doesn't look too tech. It's very, how should I put it? I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's really nothing wrong with that particular piece as far as I'm concerned, and I like it. So that's what I'm doing for my triggers. They're very basic. Okay, next I took my trigger pattern here, and I cut out 2 of those out of the 5mm scrap foam I had from the initial make on all this, and I glued these on, and I glued the triggers in just using some super glue. And next, since this one's going to be right and this one's going to be left, there's going to be a few things that are going to be different from one to the other. And the one on the right hand, the release for the slide and whatever is going to be on this side, and for the one on the left, it's going to be on the opposite side, because if you have right-handed on both sides, you wouldn't be able to change your clips. I know that's a little obsessive, but I'm doing it. Alright, so for these pieces here, I didn't film this because I didn't have a template or a pattern for it. This is just some 2mm EVA foam I just cut to shape, a couple scraps of the 5mm, and right in between here is just some tubing that I got from the hospital. I did the same thing on both, and I know that's kind of random, but it's what I had lying around, and I just cut it straight down the middle. You can see that's what's left of it after I cut it. The original tubing looks like this, just plastic round tubing. Yeah, next I'm going to go on to the sights. I need to put some sights on here and some other little cuts and sanding and detail work I'm going to do, and then I'm going to seal it. Alright, so next I went and I put the sights on here, and I just once again freehand cut them out of some 5mm scraps. I also put on the ends for the clips, and I just cut a strip of 5mm foam, cut it straight on this end here, and then I cut it at a bias here. And I did both of these, and they both match up pretty well. Getting more and more excited to seal this and paint it. Alright, so for the finishing touches I was just talking about, for example here, I took the X-Acto blade and I cut some slits into this, which I then heated so they spread up and gave it kind of a textured look on the hammer. And I also put a couple screws in each side where the hand grips are. All this, of course, is going to be painted over initially black, but I did put some super glue on these as I screwed them in. And the final things, of course, I did are the barrel. And I made the barrel out of these black things I just happened to have laying around. They're called screw protectors. I got them at Lowe's for pretty cheap in the section where the screws and such are. And this here on the bottom, that's just a piece of a hot glue stick. And I don't know if you can see it here, but I did texture it with the crisscross markings on this bottom glue stick piece. Hopefully that'll show up once it's painted. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Of course, you can decorate yours anywhere that you want, but this is what I did with what I had laying around. And next, I'm going to get into the ceiling. And I'm going to seal this up with some Mod Podge. And I'm going to put it everywhere except on the grips. The grips I'm actually just going to leave paint plain, and I'm just going to paint them with my airbrush, and then the rest of it's going to be painted over with some metallic, and the grips are going to be done either to look like wood, or I'm just going to leave them all black. I haven't decided yet. Alright, I just went ahead and brushed some Mod Podge on them to seal them up, and now that that's all done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my airbrush here, and I'm going to spray them up, and for that I'm going to mix together some opaque black and some 40-30 additive, which is just a balancing agent that's a polyurethane, an acrylic polyurethane, water-based. And yeah, mix those two together and go ahead and paint this up. Alright, next I'm going to take some Wicked Silver from Creatix, and I'm going to mix it with some 40-30, which is a acrylic polyurethane. I'm going to thin that out some and put it in my airbrush, and not do a solid coat, but just kind of a mist over the black. I'm not going to mask off the grips or anything. I don't really feel like I need to. Whatever I get on it, I'm just going to keep these black. So I'm just going to go back through and brush paint over them if I have to. Alright, so I painted the grips black. I don't know if you could tell from the previous clip, but I painted areas like the trigger and the hammer, and this area right in here with a much heavier amount of silver. Kind of break it up and make that stand out. Same thing with the tip of the piece. It kind of goes from pretty thick and then fades back out. This front end would have a lot of wear, especially since the holsters that I'm going to make for this are going to be open at the bottom, and these ends are going to stick out. And I did a nice gloss black on the grips. I think that looks pretty good. And next what I'm going to do is I have some sterling silver acrylic craft paint here. And I'm going to use that to put a little extra shine on certain areas, like these edges. Give it the extra appearance of wear. I'm going to go ahead and do that around on most of the edges, give it some highlights. Alright, and at this point they're pretty much done. I went through and did some of the brushing to bring out some, help some of these lines and details and stuff show up, but also just to simulate, some wear and tear on the actual prop itself. And yeah, it was fun making these, and I'm stoked to have them for my Red Hood costume. I am going to go through and paint these tips orange. Safety orange, I haven't done that yet, but I am going to do that. And I may end up putting like a Red Hood logo on the grips. I haven't quite decided yet. I'm still debating on it. I need to get more of the costume together before I decide all that, and also like to see how they look on me while I'm wearing the costume with the holsters for these that I have not made yet. But I'm going to do that very, very soon. That'll probably be in the next video. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, also please hit the like button. And I hope all of you watching have a great day.